What's up, guys? It is time for our third day of our 1 Peter devotional series. So today you were supposed to read 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 12. So 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 12. If you haven't read that yet, go ahead and read that. If you haven't seen the first two, they're up on YouTube, and you can catch up in that way, and then you'll be ready to go for today. So 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 10. Let's hit some highlights. All right. Christ's identity. Peter refers to Jesus as a couple things here, as the living stone. He is living. He proved to be the Messiah through his resurrection. So when Jesus rose from the dead, he proved that he was alive, proved that he was living. Not only is he alive today, but Jesus is life-giving. Jesus is one who gives us life. That is that pours life into us. So he's living in that way. And a stone, he's also not moving. He's a firm foundation. He's solid. He also says Jesus is the cornerstone. That's important. Cornerstone is an old idea, but it still exists today. But in the ancient Near East, the cornerstone was the first stone where all the dimensions of the rest of a building were decided off of. So if the cornerstone was a square, the building would be a square, and so on and so forth. So this is a perfect analogy for who Jesus is, because everything that we are as believers is based on who Christ is as a person. Like that cornerstone, if it's a square, the building's a square. If Jesus is this loving God who gives us life, then we are to be full of love and full of people who give life to people, who share love and the truth with other people. So we are to model after Jesus as that cornerstone. Verses 4 through 6. Jesus is chosen and precious. Whatever the world says about Jesus, God ultimately decides who he is. Whatever the world says, God says, no, this is my chosen and precious son. So that's who Jesus is. What about who we are? Obviously that we are to follow after Jesus as the cornerstone, but it talks a little bit more about our identity as people, not just even as believers, but as people. Because here, verse 4 and 7 talks about how non-believers will ultimately reject him. They stumble over him and are offended by him in verse 8. They will spend their lives rejecting the perfect cornerstone, stumbling over him at every turn, and ultimately falling to their demise for ignoring what was right in front of them. They stumble because they rebel. It's not an accidental stumbling. They are rebelling against God, the people that are non-believers. But believers are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. We're no longer just these stones lying around with no purpose. We have that cornerstone to lock in on, to model our lives after. We are like a building built off that cornerstone to look more and more like Jesus. So now what? Because of who God is and who he's called us to be, we are to turn away from our sin. Remember that living a sin-filled life is to belittle what God has done for you. If you choose to just say, God the Father, who's going to give me grace so I can do whatever I want, like we talked about last time, that is to belittle all the work that Jesus did for you so that you can receive this life-giving God. Non-believers will try and find flaw in us. They will mock us. They will persecute us for our faith. That's just a reality of our faith and what we have to deal with here on earth. So live in such a way, and this is biblical, live in such a way that non-believers have no choice but to question you. Have no choice but to question you. Make them wonder what it is that we have that they don't. Because our faith ultimately, like we've talked about, produces fruit. And because of that, non-believers will see it. They will see the fruit being produced from you. They will acknowledge the need they have and turn away from their own sin to glorify God. Scripture is clear that this is a way that we can make disciples. It is clear that we can make disciples through our conduct, that we can live in such a way that non-believers have no choice. They have no choice but to either just rebel and continue to stumble over this or turn from their own sin and follow Jesus. So that is our devotional for today. That was 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 12, and we will see you again for the next one.